Happy Black Friday, everyone. I'm back with another series of unfortunate events, and this will be part two of what is possibly maybe three or four parts. And this part is covering the Miserable Mill, the Austere Academy, and the Ersatz Elevator, which were only adapted by Netflix for the second season of the miniseries. Before I get into it, I want to cover a few things I was remiss to mention in the last video that covered the movie, the first season of the miniseries, all inspired by The Bad Beginning, The Reptile Room, and The Wide Window. The first, thing I was remiss to mention is the acting group member, identified only as the person of indiscriminate gender, is not just someone androgynous in the book and miniseries. In the movie, this character is dressed and groomed entirely as a man on one side and entirely as a woman on the other, contributing to what I saw as excessive cringe. And also, the white faced women in the movie both had small roles in Frasier, one of my favorite shows, in I think the ninth or the 10th season. And one of them, this one, was in a single episode as a physical therapist, as kind of a sub for Daphne, named Frederica. And the other one was in the ninth, and so I think she kind of crossed over between two seasons as Niles's very short-term second wife named Mel. Finally, the way the movie ended, with the summary judgment of poetic justice for Count Olaf before having the conviction overturned under mysterious circumstances, was not in the book and more or less trumps any possibility for sequels based on the books. But that's neither here or there. Now that we have this mini series, and without, now that we have, I am fumbling like crazy. Now we have the miniseries, just the miniseries. And without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, the Miserable Mill, which starts right out of the gate with a divergence from the book. The first one being the continuation of the mystery the Baudelaires are unfolding about who their parents really were, with some cutscenes to these very not dead parents in hiding and hoping they're okay, the children, I mean. The other being that in the book, Mr. Poe delivered the kids to the Lucky Smells lumber mill personally because their newest guardian was there, and it was Phil, the perpetual optimist. And in the show, right on the heels of the Wide Window episodes, where they survived a hurricane, lost Aunt Josephine, and exposed Captain Sham as Count Olaf, they ran away and hitchhiked in the bed of a lumber truck and found themselves at the Lucky Smells lumber mill, where they were put to work right away. And the rest is pretty much the same from book to show. Everyone gets chewing gum for lunch and breakfast, and they are paid in very random coupons. And Klaus gets hypnotized by the on-site optometrist, who, by the way, is the same talent that played Justice Strauss in the movie. Also, the same is the foreman, being the hook-handed acting troupe member in disguise with a name that is just an anagram of Count Olaf. I'm gonna butcher this. I believe it is pronounced Lacutono. Anyway, okay. And also, without Count Olaf, he's hiding in plain sight and looking cringe in drag as Shirley, Dr. Orwell's receptionist. And the arrangement behind this being only in the show as Count Olaf coming bearing an olive branch to Dr. Orwell, who had been an old girlfriend of his that he left under dire circumstances, and thus resentment was inspired. When Violet figures out that Klaus is under hypnosis, she steps into his shoes as the voracious reader of the family to find out how to break the spell, which liberates not only Klaus. I hate it when I have to use the laptop mouse. Anyway, liberates not only Klaus, but everyone who works in the mill happily, seemingly happily, for gum and coupons. And the ending of the miserable mill in the pages and on the screen is different. Only in the way that I hate sometimes having to read a script. I'm so fumbly. You ever have it where you know what you want to say, you try to cough it up in one breath? Anyway, it's only in the way Dr. Orwell meets her end. In the book, she falls backward onto the saw blade she is threatening Charles with. The miniseries takes this much darker by having Dr. Orwell kind of pitch backward into the furnace she is threatening to throw Sunny into. All right, moving right along. Hopefully, I will not overstay this on. I'm so sick of this. Next is the Austere Academy, because placing the Baudelaires with guardians who keep getting deaded by Count Olaf, Mr. Poe throws up his arms in both the book and the show and places them in a boarding school. That both the book and the show resemble, in the book, it resembles a cemetery. There. Also, the same are the introduction of the Quagmires and the vice principal who thinks he's a violin prodigy, even though he sucks. Teachers named after fish whose lesson plans involve anecdotal nonsense from their own lives and measuring random things from their own homes, including the skeleton of a house cat in the book. Also, the same is their moldy and crab infested dwelling, and Count Olaf in disguise, again as the new gym teacher who wears a turban and literally runs them ragged. The only differences, and they are small differences, is the odious Carmelita Spatz being given bursts of song and dance and being excused from having to wear the school uniform on account of being the vice principal's favorite. In the book, she's just another garden variety grade school douchebag who denounces the Baudelaires and the the Quagmires, as cake sniffers, whatever that means. The other difference is Violet's invention of noisy shoes to keep the crabs in their tin shack from pinching them while they sleep. And the final difference, for a comedic effect for those of us old enough to understand, is the use of innuendos, such as Vice Principal Nero dictating letters to Sonny in the capacity of his secretary, to Juilliard over a restraining order, and to Mozart for ghosting him. Count Olaf in the role of Coach Genghis, who scolds him for naughty talk in front of the children for saying he has to wax his violin bow, suggesting that's kind of a euphemism for, a certain private act. And the book and the show match in the end with Count Olaf kidnapping the Quagmires just as the Baudelaires expose him after passing their onstage exams. Finally, in this segment of unfortunate events is the Ersatz Elevator, where the Baudelaires are taken in by the rich and powerful squalors, not because they have big hearts and money to spare, because Esme is a slave to trend following and adopting orphans has just become fashionable. Most everything in the book and the miniseries are the same. The huge penthouse apartment, the pinstripe suits, and Count Olaf in plain sight, this time disguised as an auctioneer named Gunther. Also the same are the Quagmires being found at the bottom of an ersatz elevator. And what's different is that the two of the 71 rooms in the penthouse apartment contain items that Violet repurposed into climbing devices, including a huge ball of rubber bands for climbing down and the world's largest handkerchief for creating a makeshift hot air balloon. In the book, they used neckties and drapery to climb up and down the elevator shaft. Also different is the reemergence of a character called Larry Your Waiter from the wide window episodes in the fashionable all salmon restaurant. Also, this is the first mention of the sugar bowl in the show that Esme has an obsession with, and that Count Olaf is more than just her acting coach. And the Ersatz Elevator book and episodes come together at the end with the Baudelaires overbidding on a huge box of doilies because they thought the VFD connection was solid when it was just a red herring, while the Quagmires were being spirited away in a piece of decor that looked just like a red herring. And in the end, Jerome Squalor wished them well but didn't step up for them. And the Baudelaires are on to their next adventure to be continued. That is all for this segment of Series of Unfortunate Events. If you like my videos and want to help me out, you know the drill. If you're feeling generous, I have sponsors in the description. And thank you so much for joining me this week, and I will see you next book and movie.